In 2009, the most powerful man in the world begged to keep a phone. That man was Barack Obama, President of the United States. National security wanted him to give it up immediately. He refused. That phone wasn't an iPhone. It was a BlackBerry. At one point, 1 in every 2 smartphones sold on Earth came from this company. People called it Crackberry because it was that addictive. But just 5 years later, that empire had almost vanished. So what really happened to BlackBerry? While Apple was quietly preparing, another company stood at the top of the world. It was Research in Motion, later known simply as BlackBerry. This company wasn't born in Silicon Valley. It came from a small town in Canada. The technical mind behind it was Mike Lazaridis, an engineer obsessed with wireless email. The other half was Jim Balsillie, a sharp, relentless businessman. Together they built something the world had never seen, a phone that sent and received email instantly. For business people, this wasn't just technology, it was power. Banks, lawyers, politicians, everyone needed a BlackBerry in their hand. By 2009, this company controlled nearly half the global smartphone market. Their stock soared, turning both founders into billionaires. Their formula for success was simple: a real keyboard, military-grade security, a battery that lasted for days. They believed this formula would never go out of style. Why change anything when everything was working perfectly? In internal meetings, no one dared question the company's direction. They believed enterprise customers would stay loyal forever. To them, a phone wasn't a toy. It was a serious business tool. The idea of a phone with no physical keyboard sounded ridiculous. Who would want to type on a slippery piece of glass? While Apple quietly rewrote the rules, BlackBerry believed it was untouchable. But just months later, that belief would be tested in ways they never saw coming. Before it became a giant, Apple was a company on the edge of bankruptcy. In 1997, Apple was weeks away from shutting down for good. Their stock hit the lowest point in the company's history. Steve Jobs, the co-founder, had been fired from his own company over a decade earlier. Now he was back, not as a hero, but as a last resort. Their biggest rival, Microsoft, dominated nearly the entire personal computer market. Microsoft even had to invest money just to keep Apple from collapsing. Many believed this was simply the slow ending of a once great brand. But Steve Jobs didn't see an ending. He saw a chance to redefine an entire industry. He cut dozens of product lines down to just 4. Apple started obsessing over design, something the computer industry never took seriously. In 2001, they launched the iPod, a tiny music player that changed how the world listened to music. The iPod's success brought Apple back to life, but it wasn't their biggest bet yet. Behind closed doors, Steve Jobs quietly started a top-secret project. This wasn't about making just another phone. He wanted to build a device that could completely replace the physical keyboard. His own engineers thought the idea was insane. But Jobs believed whoever controlled the touchscreen would control the future of mobile. And that once fallen giant was now quietly preparing for a revolution. In 2009, the mobile world belonged to one name, BlackBerry. Not Apple. Not Nokia. This company from Canada. 1 in every 2 smartphones sold worldwide carried that BlackBerry logo. The company's value hit nearly $80 billion. That number alone made Silicon Valley take notice. In every Wall Street boardroom, someone was holding a BlackBerry. In Washington, politicians couldn't look away from that tiny screen. Even President Obama openly admitted he was addicted to this phone. People nicknamed it Crackberry, comparing it to a drug. It all started with 2 very different men. Mike Lazaridis, a quiet engineer obsessed with wireless communication since college. Jim Balsillie, a sharp businessman who could close any deal in the company's favor. Together, they built a formula the market had never seen before. A satisfying physical keyboard, military-grade security, a battery that lasted a full week. This wasn't a phone for entertainment, it was a tool for serious work. Major corporations, banks, and governments ordered BlackBerries for their entire workforce. Revenue climbed year after year, with no signs of slowing down. Their stock made both founders billionaires within just a few years. At that moment, no one, not even inside the company, believed this empire could fall. But not far away, in California, a storm was quietly forming. On January 9, 2007, Steve Jobs walked onto a stage in San Francisco. He held up a device no one had ever seen before. No keyboard, no stylus, just a flat sheet of glass. The room went silent for a few seconds, then erupted. Inside BlackBerry's headquarters, the news arrived just hours later. Some engineers watched the video and assumed it was a staged demo. They didn't believe any touchscreen could actually run that smoothly. But when a real iPhone was finally placed on the table, the room fell silent. Mike Lazaridis picked it up and tried typing a few words on the glass. He said something that would go down in tech history. No one is going to want to type on a piece of slippery glass. To him, a physical keyboard was simply irreplaceable. But the real question was never about the keyboard, it was about the entire ecosystem around the phone. Apple wasn't just selling a device. They were selling an app store, a new way of living. BlackBerry kept running on the old formula, because that formula was still making them enormous profits. They tried to fight back with a touchscreen phone called the BlackBerry Storm. But it launched too fast, buggy software, a screen that lagged behind every tap. Customers were disappointed. Tech reviewers tore it apart. Meanwhile, Apple's App Store exploded with tens of thousands of new apps every month. The first crack had appeared, but inside BlackBerry, no one saw it as a real threat yet. Inside BlackBerry's headquarters, a quiet war was raging between its two leaders. Mike Lazaridis wanted to focus on the technology, perfecting every last detail. Jim Balsillie wanted to move fast, expand the market at any cost. Two conflicting visions meant every major decision got stuck. Meanwhile, Android suddenly appeared, adopted for free by phone makers everywhere. The smartphone market split into two clear camps, iOS and Android. BlackBerry stood in the middle, belonging to neither. Slowly left behind. Revenue started falling, but leadership still believed they could turn things around. In 2013, they launched their final bet, the BlackBerry 10. A brand new operating system, rebuilt entirely from scratch. But it launched 6 years after the very first iPhone. By then, the market had no room left for a third player. App developers had lost interest in building for a dying platform. With no apps worth using, business users started switching to iPhones. The company's value, once nearly $80 billion, dropped to just a few billion. Thousands of employees were laid off in wave after wave of cuts. Both founders eventually stepped down from running the company. The phone a U.S. president once begged to keep had almost vanished from the market. In 2023, their story became a movie, reminding the world of this collapse. BlackBerry didn't lose because of bad technology. They lost because they trusted the formula that once made them win. BlackBerry's story isn't really about bad technology. It's about being too confident in the very formula that made you a winner. When the world changed, they kept looking at it through the past. Sometimes your biggest success becomes your most dangerous trap. Because it stops you from ever questioning yourself again. Today, BlackBerry is just a name in tech history books. But the lesson from their collapse still holds true. No empire stays unbeatable forever. So here's the question. Who's the next BlackBerry? Drop a comment below. Which tech company do you think is heading down the same road?